Hello everyone, this is Christina, and again I'm back with a Periscope about my organic garden in San Diego. And today I start the tour from a little bit of a different viewpoint. So I'm starting from the street, and what you can see here is a beautiful rose. It's a hybrid tea rose, and even now in the constant heat with very little water, it still manages to produce some bloom. This is the rose Sweetness. Let me just zoom in a little bit and show you one of the gorgeous flowers of this hybrid tea rose. They are perfectly for cutting in the vase. Very, very, very nice lavender colored flowers with actually a really, really great scent. So zooming out again, as I said today, I start from a little bit of a different angle. Thank you for the hearts. Different angle. So this is our front yard, and this is the view you can see from the street. So this is a side bed. We have removed a little bit. First, when we bought this house, this was all grass and just these huge palm trees here, and you can see they're really quite tall, and also that we have a little bit of gray sky today, which is actually very nice. It's not that hot. Of course, the weather is always important for a gardener. So just to let you know, today we have 83 degrees Fahrenheit are expected. In the moment it's 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would be equivalent to 28 degrees Celsius or 22, the highest temperatures are 22 degrees Celsius right now. So, but back to the bed. So first this was all grass. Then we just started to plant one rose in the middle of the bed, which we later removed because it was an unhealthy variety that got way too big. Then we kind of had here a kidney-shaped bed. And then lately, with the drought, we decided to take even more lawn out. So you see there's no lawn to the sides of this bed anymore. It is just soil. And just very lately, we put in this bender board divider to my neighbors to keep his mulch where it is and to keep my mulch on our side. So my intention is to plant up the bed with perennials in the places where you can see the soil. But you know, in the summer, all gardening is a little bit at a hold or just moves on in a very slow pace because it is just so hot and it's really unpleasant to work. So the rose that you can see in front is Our Lady of Guadalupe. Also producing just a few blooms right now, but if you look closely, it's hard to see for me with the camera, but then you can see, hopefully, that there are plenty of buds. Yeah, maybe here it's a better perspective. There are plenty of buds, and I'm expecting another nice flush from this rose soon. It's probably its fourth flush. Then in the middle here, not looking very impressive right now, this is an Alstroemeria. It is called Little Miss Sophie. And Little Miss Sophie has decided to kind of pull back into the ground because it is too hot. And with the water restrictions that we are having, it's very, very hard to keep plants going. Interestingly, I have a plant, also an Alstroemeria, a different variety in the backyard, and that is flowering just fine. So I assume that the roots of the palm that I just showed, and I will show it again, that's a Queen Anne palm, a huge Queen Anne palm, 2 trunks, is basically getting most of the nutrients and the water from the rose, so from the Alstroemeria, so that it has a very hard time growing here. But the experience is that each year it comes back, and it's pretty good, you know, until the end of spring, and in autumn it will probably show up again as well. But long-term plans are to take the Alstroemeria out, give it a better place in another location in the garden, and plant another rose here. So let me move a little bit. So again, we are seeing the rose Sweetness hybrid tea rose, which is a very, very nice fragrance. And now comes into the picture this is actually a climbing rose. It's actually climbing iceberg. And I have to say, I'm not too happy with this rose. Again, it is forgiven that it looks a little bit ratty right now after all the heat, and it has bloomed, which is nice, but it has powdery mildew since a couple of years, and I think it's a little bit too dark, and the intention is to take this rose out and either replace it with a more healthy variety or maybe put an evergreen in here or another plant that's a little bit more robust and drought tolerant. So moving to the other side, now you just see the garage. And here is another climbing iceberg rose. And you see this one is doing much better. It has flowered profusely last week. And now it's kind of just the rest of the flush, but I think it's still very nice. So it's lovely. I just deadheaded it today in the morning. I'm trying to spend half an hour each day in the garden to tidy things up, to deadhead and maintain. And I have to say, just half an hour makes quite a bit of a difference. So you really see the work and the love that you put in a garden immediately if you just take care a little bit of it. So again, climbing iceberg looking much better than the one, let me see if I can show it to you, on the right side of our house. And this one I think will stay a little bit longer. So I'm turning towards the view to the street, and I will show you my pygmy date palm. This is planted in an island bed. We didn't do the hardscape here. The design, it was already laid out when we bought the house. But this palm is really growing very nicely, and I fertilized it with all-purpose fertilizer, and it has greened up nicely. This is not so common, I would say, or usually the case with palms here in San Diego. I didn't know that myself, but they need quite a bit of fertilizer, and if you see and think about all the green fronds that they are producing, it's pretty clear that they need fertilizer. But most people, I think, they are not aware of it, or they don't give them the fertilizer, and then you end up with having palms that are fairly yellow and not very pleasing looking to the eye. So if I kneel down, what you see here is a penstemon, which is also blooming I think for 3 to 4 weeks, which is quite good. But now it's at the very end of this flowering phase. But I have to say I like it quite a bit, and I think I will also try to keep it. So again, moving to the front of the walkway to the house. I'm really happy about this rose in the moment. This is Pretty Jessica. And as you see, it's really producing a very nice bloom in general, and they are fragrant. It's really too bad that I cannot transport the scent to you. It's really beautiful flower with a very pleasing scent. That's an Austin rose, David Austin rose, and what's actually nice about it is that it stays a relatively small size. A lot of roses bred by David Austins, they are very beautiful, but they become humongous monsters, to be honest, and they are hard to keep in a regular size garden here in California. We don't have much space. The land is very expensive, so each inch actually that comes with your property, you can really be happy to have it. And when the roses get so out of proportion, it's just very hard to garden with them if you have so limited space. So I give you a little bit of a better view about the whole bush. So you see it's just maybe 2.5 feet high, max 3. I'm still a little bit bad estimating in feet. I'm better in centimeters and meters because I'm from Germany, which you may hear or have detected by my accent already. Then here on the right side of Pretty Jessica is a hardy geranium. It's called Roseanne, and that's actually quite a keeper. It flowers and flowers and flowers. So it usually looks a little bit better, but I spot watered earlier in the morning today, and the blooms still lie down a little bit from the water, but they will stand up soon again. Then here to the right, a rose that I also dearly love, which is Marie Pavier. This rose has a very interesting fragrance. It's kind of a musky fragrance, myrrh fragrance, musky. I like it. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I like it quite a bit. And as you see, the buds and blooms, they face to the sun, which is the other side. And maybe I just go around and show it to you from the front. So this is also quite a floriferous rose. So here we are, and you can see there are plenty of little buds coming up. Very thankful for fertilizer and of course a little bit of extra water. Here's another nice spray with tons of buds. Again, I like this rose very much, and I know that usually in the literature the final size of this rose is usually given at a much smaller size than it is here, and I pruned the rose back quite a bit. So I think if you let it go, and I have seen this rose in California once, where I think it was 6 feet high and 6 feet wide. It was a very old rose. So when you look at reference books and see the estimated size, just be a little bit careful. At least in California it can become much bigger. So here's another rose that I like a lot. It's Lavender Crystal, but as you see, this rose has some black spot here. It's very clear, which is unusual for our climate. Hi Volker, nice that you join in. So I'm just showing you here beautiful lavender, but it has a very clear lavender color, this rose, which I really like. But I'm not too happy with the black spot, and I have to say I'm quite clear about that. When a variety is not doing well, it has to go, but usually I keep a rose for 3 years, which may seem long to you to try it out. My observation is simply that it takes roses really a time to mature, and if you want to judge about the rose, you just need to give them some time. So 1 season I think is not enough. So sometimes when roses maturing, they become more disease resistant. That is at least my observation. Then here to the right you see white dianthus, and this is really a plant that I can highly recommend. I was surprised myself, but they are fairly drought tolerant. They flower and bloom and flower and bloom, keep going. And the name of this one is Floral Lace White. So dianthus in general I can recommend for our climate here in Southern California, but this variety in particular does really well for me here. And I love white flowers, and again the fragrance of these ones is also very nice. Going to the right, this is a plant where I have to look at my little sheet with notes here. I hardly can remember the name. So it's Plectranthus ciliatus. This is the Latin name, and the variety name is Mona Lavender. And I really like this plant. Hello there, liebe Thomas. I guess that's somebody from Germany as well. Welcome. So I'm here in Southern California and giving a tour through my front yard. So back to this plant. So Mona Lavender, Plectranthus ciliatus, nice plant. I was very happy when I got it, and now I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed because the foliage is beautiful. It's a dark green, almost bluish foliage, and if you see the undersides, it's really purple, a deep purple. So very interesting plant, and I just love it for the foliage itself. The blooms are also very lovely. To me they look like almost like very delicate orchid flowers, but it doesn't seem to be able to keep up with the drought as good as I thought. So I have another plant in the front yard which is pretty burned, and it needs more water than I'm able to give it. So, and also it has become much taller than I thought. So this may have to go. Again, just trying things out, and when they don't work, they have to go. To the right side, adjacent to this plant, is Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is a Floribunda rose, blooming and blooming and blooming. The repeat of this rose is almost as fast as of the very common white iceberg rose that I showed you before, the Floribunda rose. So it has at least, I would say, here's another nice spray, 4 flushes a year, which I think is really amazing to get something like that. And you see the flowers have a very elegant silvery pink color. It's not the screaming pink that you sometimes get in roses. I really like it, but here's a downside. It also suffers from powdery mildew in my organic no spray garden here in Southern California in San Diego. I have to say I have been tolerating the mildew in this rose because this rose is growing under another pygmy date palm. You see it here, so it's not in full sun, and I think that's part of the reason why it gets more powdery mildew than the one that I showed earlier in the on the left side of my front garden. And what's really interesting, the ability to flower of this rose seems to be unaffected by the powdery mildew. So here's another pygmy date palm, which I think is in good shape, also pretty green, no yellow fronds. And if you look down here, here are my blue glazed terracotta spheres, which I think are a very nice feature in this garden. I just love blue glazed terracotta pots and in general the pottery. Hi Estelle, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoy the rest of the tour through my front yard in San Diego, and my organic garden in San Diego. So here we are seeing the second Our Lady of Guadalupe Floribunda rose. And you see this flowers even more, and both of the roses are actually at the end of their flushes. So there were much more blooms earlier last week when I showed you around. Hi from Germany, hello. Continuing the tour, let me just see if I can show you this. So I have these 2 Floribundas. You see here's the first in the front and the second in the back. So I just like the repetition of the color. I don't like gardens that are too restless. Thank you so much for all the hearts. Thank you. Pink hearts. They are fitting to the rose. Thank you so much. Thanks. Moving on to the right, here is Salvia Mystic Spires Blue, and this plant is an absolute keeper. Look how floriferous, thank you for the blue hearts, now fitting to the Salvia. Thank you so much. This plant is really a keeper here in Southern California in my garden. It's blooming and blooming and blooming profusely. The bees love it. You cannot hear it probably, but there's quite a bit of buzz because the bees are in the plants and are feeding from the nectar. And again, for the temperatures and the heat that we are having here, it's really amazing that this plant is flowering so much. And you see in the middle, you see a little artificial hummingbird. I think it just complements the salvia quite nicely. Again, moving a little over to the right side, now we come to the Prince. This is another, oh, somebody said nice, thank you so much. This is another rose bred by David Austin, and you see the blooms, they can be really gorgeous. I just will pull it down a little bit so that you can see it better. It's a little bit damaged by the sun, but still pretty good. And the fragrance, honestly, that fragrance of this rose is to die for. It's a very, very, very lovely bloom. Rose itself has a little bit of powdery mildew. Bloom form is a little not the bloom form, I'm sorry, the bush form is a little scraggly, but it's all forgiven because of these absolutely gorgeous blooms. Again, moving on to the right, we are almost at the front door. I just show you where we are heading. So this is the front door. We are almost there. Oh my goodness, someone is hearting and hearting and hearting. Thank you so much. So here, not something to totally write home about, but I'm really for an honest garden tour, not showing you the highlights. So this is a pelargonium that was quite amazing in the spring. It's still flowering a little bit. And you see the blooms are quite gorgeous, but I think it needs fertilizer and probably also a little bit more water than I can give it. Hi Telhek, welcome to the Periscope. You're here in San Diego in my organic garden, and I'm almost at the end of the tour. So if you have missed the beginning and you would like to see it, I hope everyone knows that Periscope is saving the Periscopes for 24 hours, so you can go back and watch the replay, and then you can also still see the first part of the tour. So the rose I'm showing now, this is white Mightyland, and this is a killer rose. It is more a ground cover rose, and honestly I have planted it in an impossible corner in my garden. It's so much in the shade, way too much shade for a rose. It's flowering, and it has no disease whatsoever. I think that is really absolutely amazing. So this is really a rose I can totally recommend for Southern California. I think I will put it in a better spot, and will enjoy the blooms even more. Here, this is a cyclamen, and it's blooming in the middle of summer. So I'm absolutely astonished by that. So I have no idea why that is the case. It should be blooming way, way, way later in the year, but of course I'm not complaining. It also needs a little bit of fertilizer to produce a little bit of bigger blooms. And I just see at the foot of the pot, I guess this is a little, I don't know if it's a runner, maybe it's a seedling from the geranium that I just showed you, or maybe it is a seedling of one of the other geraniums that I have in my garden. So let me just go back a little bit, and here we come to a bed which I call the hell strip in my garden. So this is a very small bed. I think it's 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet max wide, and as you see, it is in between. This is the white painted wall of our garage, and then you see this is a walkway to the house, so it gets reflected heat from both surfaces, the concrete from the walkway to the house, and then of course from the reflection from the white wall of the garage. And it's really incredibly difficult to garden here, and I'm not a whiner, but this bed is really a challenge. So I planted, I had another of the Mona Lisa Plectranthus ciliatus that I showed earlier planted here, but that plant got way too big and was totally burned, so I took it out. And as a replacement, I planted another geranium, or I think more properly they are called pelargoniums. I always mix these two up. And it looked awful. Not that it's looking good right now. It was scorched by the sun, and it's just coming back a little bit. And if you go in here, you see little leaves are shooting up. So I just hope, again, I don't know how good the camera is. You see even in the middle, I think it is recovering. So first I was so frustrated and thought, oh my God, I just rip it out again. But now I have decided I will just wait a little bit and hope that it recovers. And if it's still here next year, I think then I can really judge if I give it the time to go through all 4 seasons, then I can really judge if this plant is an appropriate plant for this garden or not. The rose to the left is Pink Pat, and that's actually an Erskine rose. As far as I know, in Texas, they started to test roses, how they grow, I think either with no fertilizer or only on organic fertilizer, and how the disease resistance is. And that is one rose that earns the title Erskine rose. And obviously this rose is not only good for in Texas. Thank you so much for the blue hearts. This is not only, and there are 3 more, this is not only a rose that's doing well in Texas, it's also doing very well in Southern California. And if you look at the leaves, they have turned a little bit yellow, part of them, from the heat and the little water, but there's no disease at all. Here's another spray that's a little bit over, but you can see, I mean, the flowers are cute as a button. They don't last long in a vase, but they're very pretty, you know, on the table in a little bud vase. Again, moving more to the left, here's another salvia, and actually I think I forgot to say the name earlier of the variety. This is Salvia Mystic Spires Blue, and that is again a salvia that's doing absolutely well here in my garden, and as you see, there are really bees around. It provides a lot of food for pollinators, and if nature is on your heart and you want to do something for nature, then planting a salvia like this is really a good idea. So we are almost done. Here is one rose. It's almost covered by the salvia. It's really hard to show. And you know, I'm just going blank with the name right now. I think it will come to me later. Oh, now I got it. It's Old Fashioned Girl, and you see very, very lovely, slightly apricot flowers in the center, otherwise green, and very, very nice form. This is really a cute miniature rose, and if it wouldn't be so covered by the salvia, I think it would be in much better shape. But even now it, you know, produces some flowers. Here some more. You see the buds. Very nice rose. That's also a rose that I can recommend for Southern California. So the name is Old Fashioned Girl. And then just following up my periscope from last week, here is the second miniature pelargonium. So I think this time I'm using the accurate name. And again, looking awful, but I have decided not only to show the successes in my garden, but also the failures. I think the problem is I planted it just a few weeks ago, and when it got so hot, it was very difficult not to overwater it, not to underwater it. And I was also traveling 2 times in the last couple of weeks. And then, of course, it's very hard if someone else is watering the newly planted stuff to just keep it going. And then to the left, even worse, this is a sedum. I think this is called Sedum hispanicum purpureum. And I think this is almost done. So also planted just a few weeks ago, and it just doesn't seem to make it. I still will give it some time, maybe to die by its own. It's a little hard to see, but and who knows, maybe it recovers. So, but you know, the last plant that I want to show you, this is another pelargonium. The group is called Martha Washington pelargoniums, and this plant has really, really gorgeous flowered, and it has flowered very well. I think it needs a little bit more fertilizer, and then it will go on a little bit more. So again, not a super success, but as I said, I want to be completely honest with you, not just showing what works, but also what doesn't. So first of all, my fault. These are 2 regular pelargoniums, white flowering pelargoniums. Here's a bloom. Nice when they bloom, but one thing that's really hard, you need to break out the flowers. Here's one after they have bloomed, and that's really a lot of work. Let me just get one more. So I just haven't done that yet, and with all the roses that I have to deadhead, I just don't get to every plant. But you see, it's pretty bugged by insects. I think I had these green rose slugs on, and you see the leaves are really not looking very good. So I think I may get rid of this plant, at least in front of the front door. Here's another one. I try to, you know, go symmetrical and have 2 of them. Here's another bloom. Same thing, I need to break out the spent flowers, and I think in the long term it's just a little bit too much work, so I think I may get rid of this plant and plant something else in these containers. So I think I will finish the tour by giving you a view of what I'm seeing when I'm looking out of my front door. So again, for the heat that we are having, it's pretty decent, and as you may recognize, the sun has come out, and it's going to be another warm, beautiful day, which is nice for the humans. But again, all the sun without any rain is very hard for the garden. So that's it from me here today. Again, if you missed the beginning of the show, you can see the replay for another 24 hours. So I say goodbye to you and wish everyone a nice rest of the Sunday. Thanks for watching, and I try to be back here next week with another garden tour of my garden. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good week ahead, and I hope I see you again next week on next week's weekend. Thank you. Bye bye.